Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for attending. I'm the chair, Tom Muir, and would like to welcome you all to this, our first AGM. Before I go into it, first, if everyone is happy with this being recorded for the minutes, and if no one objects, it'll be made available to those that couldn't attend. If you do object to it, please put a note in the chat. Secondly, if you want to use the transcript, you can switch that on in the live transcript at the bottom of the screen. Rule 48 says that the quorum should be 5% membership, including those that are present or requested to be represented. And I'm pleased to say that we have doubled that. We now have 10%, which is great. There was always the apprehension that we would be speaking to no one else. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for investing and attending this, our first AGM, which I'm proud to say is for the first year where we have purchased the property and have started towards developing it into homes for life for 9 people. With us here tonight, we have in person Helen Carlin, our secretary, on the board, Jenny Gottrey, and myself, Tom Muir, the chair. Also with us is Francis Barkey from the board, who will be speaking later about the new development and what's going to be placed. Jonathan Gould, who handles our marketing, is controlling our Zoom tonight. Thanks, Jonathan. And Danny Dodds-Wilson from the Charity Bank, who are one of our supporters. Thank you. The first item on the agenda, as all board members have to stand down, is to vote the new board members. We have got 3 candidates and we will be voting for them separately. Full details are contained in the agenda, but myself, I will be standing, Helen and Jenny.
So I'm standing down, but I'm very happy to stand up again. I'm sure there's a song about that, but yes, be grateful for your vote. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would be the same as well, standing down and be happy to be voted.
As is myself. Thank you. We are going to be voting using the polling function on Zoom. They'll be done individually, and Jonathan will bring that up. It's a simple yes/no question. Yes for yes or no for each of the candidates.
Okay, folks, thanks very much. I think everybody's voted there, so we're going to close voting now for that. Okay, Tom?
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to the results in a bit. First of all, I would like to pass over to our secretary, Helen Carlin, who's going to bring us up to date with the progress of Peffer Mill.
Oh, hello everyone, and thanks very much, not just for attending tonight, but for your belief in Common Ground and for investing with us. There's been a few changes about the specification, but I think the slide that I'm seeing, sorry, you could go back, the slide that I'm seeing, I just want to say something about my personal investment, not money-wise, but cause-wise in this, is that I set up Brown Alba eons ago, and part of my motivation for starting up Common Ground was to give people the opportunity that their money, their donations would go straight across to providing a home for life for especially street homeless people. I was very frustrated by seeing large campaigning organisations get shed loads of money. And so here I think I wear two hats tonight. So I just wanted to say a little word about Rowan Alba and who it is that we're all here to help. It's street homeless people, and there's a dearth of suitable accommodation for them. At Rowan Alba, we spent £28,000 on legal fees, chasing 3 buildings that we couldn't finalise a lease for, Edinburgh being such a hub of tourism. And I just want to, I think stories speak louder than anything else. So this is Jerry. Jerry had been on the streets for 18, 20 years in a variety of places. And what we're replicating with Common Ground is suitable accommodation for people like Jerry that had nowhere else to go or were slung out of temp accommodation because of addiction issues. Interesting to note that Jerry has now been with us 6 years. It's his first settled home in a very long time. And he's actually, part of our brief is not to talk people out of their addictions, because that can often have the opposite effect. But Jerry's actually been sober for a couple of years and happy to continue living with us. So if we're in any doubt about the impact that your investment is making, then that's what it is. So 9 more people like Jerry off the streets. It's phenomenal. Next slide, please. Thank you, my beautiful assistant. So what we thought, we at the table are all investors, and we just wanted to give you some sort of idea of the scope and the breadth of the investment offer. So there's a very simple table there, and I guess I want to say a huge in particular thanks to the South of England. What I love about this, you can see the figures speak for themselves. You can look at them as I'm blabbing on, but what we were trying to do in setting up Common Ground was to create a community around people that were happy to invest in this. And you'll see by the breadth and the spread of those figures that we've achieved that. So again, thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions at any time, then please put up at the chat. We can't see that because we're looking at the same screen as you are, but John will take care of you, and just pop in if you have any questions. So next. So this is the Peffermill property. It's a 4-bed semi-detached Edwardian house. Francis is going to talk you through the specifics of the rebuild, which have changed quite significantly from the original plan. They've been upped, they've been extended for a variety of reasons that I'll go into when we come to look at the finances. So this is it in all its grand glory, a very specific and individual property, I would say. So, beautiful assistant, when I stop talking for 3 seconds, then it's time to move on. It's time to invite Francis Sparkin in. I think we put a great board together. We got on really well. And I must say special thanks to Francis Sparky, who has a 40-year background in construction and so forth, and a very valuable piece of what is at the moment a very small team. So over to you, Francis.
Helen, thank you very much, and good evening all. As Helen says, my expertise is in commercial construction and development, and I'm happy to give that kind of assistance to the board to see out this project. We're going to run through a few slides, and I'll explain to them now. If there's any questions as we go, please submit them to Jonathan, and we'll raise them and answer them if possible throughout the small presentation. So what you see here on the left-hand side is the existing ground floor plan of what we purchased. And on the right-hand side is what we're going to build. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice there's a garage and there's 2 rooms adjacent to each other. They get demolished, and that makes way to build the new common area and the new kitchen on the south of the building. On the right-hand side, you'll see there are 2 rooms. These are typical rooms, and I'll come to the input and the design of those rooms specifically further down the line. So moving on to the next slide. Again, on the left-hand side, you'll see the existing floor plate. There will be no resemblance to what we're going to build on the right-hand side, and that's the first floor plan. And again, you'll see another 5 bedrooms there, the back and the front of the building, each of their own en-suites, and I'll come back to the design of that as we go through this. Next slide, please. Again, you've got an existing attic and a proposed attic. Not much change there. It's a very small space, but we'll just enhance the facilities available for the tenants. Next slide, please. We'll flip through these, but these are the existing south elevations, which is the back of the building. So we demolished the right-hand side on the ground floor, the garage area, to make way for the new living spaces. And on the right-hand side, that will be proposed, or the kitchen is hidden in behind that block wall in the bulk of the density. Next slide, please. This is the front of the building. It's a semi-detached building, 2 identical sides, and we own the left-hand side of that. We'll do virtually nothing with the outside of the frontage. It looks in really good condition, so we won't tamper with that at all. Next slide, please. This is from the west side, so looking from the garden. What you'll see on the right-hand side is the new extension on the ground floor and the first floor, creating the living space and the bedrooms above. Next slide, please. There we go. On the east side, so this is now looking into the new extension at the back of the building, looking into the common area space, which will have double doors creating onto a garden area, which will create adjacent to the building. And above that, your 3 rooms with the windows looking onto the garden space. Next slide, please. Now, this is the facility we're going to create for each of the bedrooms. Jonathan, I'm not sure if they're going to run a video here or I'm just speaking my way through the link of this. But if we play the video, it would be even better. I will just give you a walkthrough of what the bedrooms will look like. So running through here, you have a small kitchen facility on your right-hand side with facilities to clean. Through here, each will have an external window, small reading and writing space with a bedroom, and a TV in the left-hand side wall. So these are really living conditions that the tenants will be able to live for the rest of their life if that's what they're looking for. But it's a lovely looking space, well facilitated, and self-contained. So these will have emergency switches in case of emergencies for attendance. We'll have Wi-Fi in each of the rooms and the TV sockets and that small kitchen area to your left-hand side. Small WC for each of the rooms, and we'll have a walk-in shower on the left-hand side. Again, very self-contained and very up-to-date and very modern. This is the kitchen area, bespoke kitchen for facility, and this will create and provide constant meals through the day. So we'll provide the breakfast, the lunch and the dinner and evening snacks if that was required. So if people want to have the meals served, they're entirely welcome to put their orders in and be given the meals of their choice throughout the day. Again, it's just a very functional, clean line building, clean line space, and that will open onto the communal area. And there's a little hatch you'll possibly see on the right-hand side as we swing over, but there'll be a hatch through there, well done, onto the communal space, so the meals can be fed through into the communal space, and that will have enough space and facility to dine the 9 tenants within the space and staff. Good. Thank you, Ian Forbes, the architect, for that. Next slide, if we could. Now, on to the development timeline. So in brief terms, planning approval, we've had the comments back from planning. They have confirmed in principle, we have planning, and we're just expecting the paperwork to come through in due course, probably the end of September. Building one, we've had their comments and we've responded to all the comments, have raised nothing untoward, and again, approved in principle, and we're expecting that by the end of September. We've now created a detailed specification and drawings that will go out to tender to 4 building contractors. They are out now, and we'll have them back by the 22nd of October. And at the moment, we've got a budget estimate that we can afford for the building and the refit and the refurbishment. And the 2 tests will be the tender returns. Once we get the tender returns, you'll get 4 prices back. And anyone knows about tendering will know that we will not get apples for apples. We'll get apples for pears. So what we need to do is spend 2 weeks just reviewing the tender returns and trying to create and understand a tender return that complies with our requirements and specifications. So when we've carried out that tender review, tender report will come before the board, and the board will discuss the returns in detail. And on the back of that will be a recommendation to appoint a contractor. The schedule at the moment is to create or appoint a building contractor by the 15th of November. Construction commences 6th of December, and the difference there is just a lead-in period to allow the contractor to get his site compound set up, pre-order any materials he needs. So when he starts on the 6th, he has a meaningful start and not girdling about. And the construction completion is on 20th of May. And at that time, the building will be handed over to Rowan Alba, who will take over and bring the soft furnishings into the project, the beds, the TVs, the furnishings, cutlery for the kitchens, and all of that is probably going to take a couple of weeks, and then we'll be up and running. So if you have any questions about all of that, please knock them in. And even as I finish this section, we can return to this before we finish, and I'll answer the questions as they come in. So thank you very much. And I think it's back to Tom.
Yeah. Thank you, Francis. It does look great. Are there any questions? You can either do this by raising your hand at the bottom or by putting it into the chat. If you want to speak, raise your hand and Jonathan will arrange it for you to appear, or not if you don't want to. Otherwise, put any comments into the chat.
We have a question from Alistair Ward, and do we have any detail on the communal spaces? Francis, if you like, I could bring up the more detailed plan. Just to you could talk around that a little more, if that would help.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan, I'm quite happy to talk about the communal space. Communal space will have a facility to dine the 9 tenants and the staff in the same room. There will be small areas of reading and writing tables within the communal space. Out with that, Helen may be able to advise on any other facilities that you propose putting into that communal space.
A small pool table, very popular. And just a few comfy chairs.
Okay. The next question is from oops. No, we're good, Jonathan. We've moved on to the communal space. No, sorry, the garden area.
Okay, sorry. I was a bit slow off the mark there.
No, you're fine. The garden area, if you leave that picture there, that's ideal. The trees to the left-hand side of the building will come down to create the garden on the left-hand side of the building. We will retain the head for privacy along the east side of the building. We're going to reconfigure the car parking spaces to maximise the amount of space we have for the garden. The existing garden on the south side, the opposite side of that building, really gets used up for bin storage and external pavements. So the main garden area will be the left-hand side of the building. We'll clear the trees and create. We haven't finished the design of the garden area yet, but it will be a very open space, available and accessible from the communal area, and it will be secure from the outside. Hope that helps. But I'm sorry, I don't have detailed layouts, but we will distribute detailed landscaping details within the next 2 weeks if you're on the website. That's me.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Oh,
Yep, we have one from Scott and Brownman. The timescales are realistic. I suppose the big concern that everyone reads about in the daily newspapers is the construction costs seem to have gone haywire with labour, which is a Brexit and a COVID implication, and also the price rises in materials, for example, steel, plasterboard, timber. And that's what I said earlier, the true test of this will be when we come back to do with the tender returns. The benefit we have here, it's quite a small project on this scale, normally by the commercial companies, and the time scale on site is quite tight. And that does help them because it does help them tie down the prices within the programme without taking too much of a risk of further price rises. But timescales we're okay with. We just need to wait and see what the contractors come back with. But in a normal development world, that's fairly sensible and robust. Any more?
Can't see any here in the participants. No one's raised a hand.
if there's no more questions, we'll move on to the results of the elections to the board, which I am happy to say it's unanimous for all 3 current board members to be voted back on. Thank you very much for that. It's a good vote in confidence. Also like to say that Francis is on the board, but he is co-opted for the lifetime of the project. I'm very grateful for his help in doing this and the experience he's brought. But because he's co-opted, he is a board member, even if we weren't. Then the next item is the accounts, which Helen is going to present, along with the revised accounts for the costs on the project. We've also got with us Danny Dodds Wilson from the Charity Bank, who will
answer any questions I can.
Yeah.
On a spreadsheet.
Yes. Once the accounts have been presented, we have to have a vote on them because they have to be accepted or not, but for them to go forward to the Charity Commission. Sorry,
Oscar.
They need to be voted on and accepted as a correct record. Hence, there's no signature on the money. Helen?
So the accounts, if we could just scroll down a bit, please. The accounts have been put together back a bit by Alan from Accounted Limited, who's a full chartered accountant. They're compliant with the FCA regulations. A version of these will go to Oscar later in the year, just to explain that we were established as a community benefit society in March, but we will then have to report to Oscar in September. We didn't get charitable status until 6 months after the FCA registration, and actually we're quite lucky to do so. But I'll just run you very quickly through the accounts. Okay, so I think we've said, at the top, I'll just go like this, John, if you can see me okay. So we just reiterate objectives and activities, which I'm sure you'll all be familiar with, our achievements and performance during the year. I mean, I think, and again, thanks to you guys for having your faith in us and allowing us to raise at the end of the share offer around 680,000. I'll come to this later when I go through the detailed financial spreadsheet in lieu of a full business plan. But the bottom line is, if we just keep going down, is I guess to look in more detail at the figures. That's us. So basically goes into unrestricted and restricted, and clearly the investment income is restricted. We can only spend that on Peppermill. So we were grateful to receive a few small grants and donations, mainly by friends and family, that are unrestricted. Obviously there's expenditure on our charitable activities, and then moving down the big important figures. So I guess we haven't received significant, out with the share investment, we haven't received significant amounts of money for either of those things. Currently we sit at £250,000, £968 in the bank, with debtors of 165, and that's to Alan at Accounted for preparing these accounts. So moving down a little bit, you can see that in unrestricted spending, we've incurred a very small deficit of £846. I'm pleased to report that we've subsequently written that off in funds received since. In unrestricted, again, the people giving us little checks or sending us a little bit of money outside share capital. And there's the figure of the share capital of 660,319 pounds. Now that doesn't reflect the total share capital, because we've already started to spend in terms of architects' fees, etc. So that's why that figure differs from the share income. And if you could move down once John's had a sip of water. As I say, the accounts have been produced in line with FCA regulations for Community Benefit Society. Does anybody have any questions before we move to approve them? Going. No questions? Can we move?
Any members can contact us through the usual channels if they have questions about it afterwards. And, you know, if they have a closer review of the accounts, which are published to the website and were included in an email this week.
Okay, so if in that case, we'll move to the poll on the accounts, please, Jonathan. Thank you very much for that vote in confidence. Now, Helen, if you want to discuss the proposed finances.
No.
Or do you want to put to Danny?
can we move on to the next slide, or are you putting up the outcome?
The outcomes come up.
So we've done the outcome. It was 14 to 0. Did you want to look at the projections, Helen? Hello? Did you want to look at the projections?
Yeah, thanks. I think I may have lost the internet connection for a little bit, sorry. Okay, so just before I run through, these are new figures to those of us that aren't on the board, but just I think 3 factors that mitigated against change the original plan. One was the original plan was around an ensuite room, and the board took the decision to up the spec and, if you like, up the ante on account of a few things. First of all, in terms of, you know, when we first envisaged this, none of us had heard of COVID, I guess, and with that in mind, we thought it would be a great idea to give our tenants more space and more communal areas, because who knows when that's going to hit again, and if they wish to cook in their own place, to give them that facility in terms of their ongoing independence. The next thing to factor in was that, as you know, we're working with our charity partner Rowan Alba. One of the impetuses for setting up Common Ground was, as I've described before, the genuine difficulty in leasing suitable accommodation and basically wasting your money on that. Common Ground, Rowan Alba, prior to Common Ground coming into being, had actually raised £240,000 towards previously envisaged accommodation, and they have agreed to transfer that money to Common Ground to get Peffermill up and running. The next thing that the board considered a way back was we sort of riskified the building, giving it to anyone in a lease of 25 years. The Scottish Government are, I guess, continually upping the standards for where homeless people live, and that's a good thing, but it presents a real challenge in terms of finding and maintaining that suitable accommodation. So we discussed in view of the extra money, and we discussed in view of things that maybe to last March hadn't seemed that real, of upping the spec, and basically investing that 240,000 into Common Ground with no expectation on any interest being paid back for that. So it was a bit of a bonus to have almost £250,000 to play with. So at that point we reviewed the spec, and so what you have here is the current figures for the new building. Yes, it's tight in places, obviously. We're now talking about a project of £1,410. We've gone to Charity Bank and Co-op Finance to plug the gap between what we raised in share investment, and I'm pleased to say that that's doable. The refurb costs are 990,000, but for that we have a building which is actually worth, I think it's 970,000 in terms of valuation, with the lease in place to our charity partners, Rowan Alba, and we're in the final stages of signing off a 5-year lease. Part of that lease, it's a 5-year break lease. If anybody's particularly interested in it, we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but we're assured of that income over the next 25 years. And I suppose the final factor here was that we thought it would give the building more longevity for investors, and the 3 of us who are investors in the board agreed to this revision some time ago. So we have an asset that is worth more with a longer life. I don't know how the rest of you are on reading spreadsheets, but I guess the important thing for us as investors is that the bottom line is viable. One of the differences around, one of the ways that we're able to cover the increased costs is that we pinned the rent, the individual rent, to tenants on the local housing, the LHA rates. Given that we're now, the offer is a 1-bed individual tenancy rather than an ensuite room, we have approximately doubled the rental income. So that's what allows us to meet that gap. We have approved charitable lending from Charitable Bank at a rate of 3.45. I think, because I'm not the best person in spreadsheets, but if you look to year 4 of the project, you see that it stacks up financially tight, but stacks up financially. One of the ways that we're managing to achieve that, which is a major impact for investors, is that we're still ambitious, and I think offering 5% at our top level rate is certainly doable. There may be some years that the original intention was to release 6% of share capital. As you'll see from the spreadsheet, there may be some years that we won't be able to release 6%. So we will be paying the same interest rate, but possibly to less shareholders per annum. So sorry, that was a little bit of a gobble, but if you have any questions, John, could you show the next page of the spreadsheet? So I apologise for not having been able to do a fully revised 10-year business plan, but I thought as investors you would want to focus on the here and now, and as I would say, the doability of the new project and the change in funding. So any questions, just please ask.
Thank you. As previously, if you could put the questions into the chat, or you can raise your hand. And you raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. No. No questions?
No questions here.
No. In that case, I must thank you all, first of all, for your investments.
Tom, there is one.
Yep. Can we have a copy of the spreadsheet? Yes. We'll be putting that out on the web. That'll get published to the website. Once we've got it into a form which is readable for the website. But yes. So, yeah. Well, right. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for investing. Thank you very much for the faith you have in this project, which we share. Thank you also for the organisations which are on the screen who have helped us with this. Thank you, Danny from Charity Bank, for coming along. Thank you, Helen, for being able to explain it without Danny's help. Thank you very much, Francis, for all the hard work you put in. But most of all, thank you. I mean, without your investment, this would not be possible. We will put out the information from the the minutes from this will be published to the website along with the revised accounts, as you've just seen. They'll be put out as well. Then we will, once that's done, we'll be able to pass on any answers to questions, which will be done in the next newsletter, which we put out, which will also contain details of everything going on the website. Other than that, thank you all very, very much for attending.
Yeah, just always have to have the last word. I see a few thanks on the thanks to us. As Tom says, we really couldn't do it without you, and I want to say thanks to my board members, thanks to Joan and Kirsten for this seamless service this evening, although there was a bit of a fluff 15 minutes before it. We were all running around my flat going, oh, but we're fine, we've got there. Thanks to Francis, who, you know, has just pulled the most phenomenal design team together. And I suppose my bottom line, and we're going to have, I mean, we'll allow Jenny to say goodbye as well, but my bottom line is, with your investment, you are taking 9 people off the streets, and I'm delighted. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I forgot to mention you.
Can't miss
And
it.
Kirsten.
Do you want to say a word?
No,
Sit forward.
I'm a bit of a ghost, so you may or may not see me. I'd just like to thank everyone also just attending tonight, to make it special because it is the first AGM and it looks as though it's a success. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, and thanks to our chair. This could go on all night.
Absolutely.
We'll leave it there.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. The next AGM will be next year, obviously. We hope to have that probably earlier than September.
Okay.
Enjoy
Let them go.
the rest of the evening. We're about to open a bottle of fizz because it's got, well, thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, folks.